Hello and welcome to Anybody and Everybody. This is the Seeds of Synergy podcast, and I'm your host, Patrick. Today will be a little bit different to previous episodes. It won't be a pondament, nor will it be a conversation. Rather, it'll be a reflection on frameworks. Before I start this reflection, I'd like to actually talk about something a friend mentioned to me the other day. When doing your pondaments, just be careful not to sound as if you're preaching from the mountaintop. I'd like to say that if I have sounded as if I'm preaching or speaking down to you, please know that that is not my intention. The whole idea of this platform is to be a place where I can express my own personal development and share conversations, thoughts, and reflections that have resonated with me and might be of some benefit to yourself. And that's not to say I'm going to be right 100% of the time. And I'll attest there's definitely areas that I'm not all-knowing in, and that's the whole point, that this is all about learning and growing together. So now, frameworks. I came across frameworks about a year ago when I was doing my thesis for university. My thesis was to develop a framework for mining companies to use in order to select electric alternatives to diesel haul trucks. So in mining, diesel haul trucks are the big pieces of equipment that transfer dirt to the processing plant, and they burn a lot of diesel, which creates a lot of CO2 emissions. And the mining industry, like all industries across the world at the moment, are radically trying to decrease their CO2 emissions, working towards a more environmentally clean practice. What I found through research and collaboration was my ability to draw information and conclusions based on a wide variety of sources. I'd do my own research and reading, but I'd also connect with industry experts that were looking into electrification outside of just the mining domain. I have a really good friend, Arthur, whose dad works for TransLink, which is the public transport company that operates in Brisbane, and he heads the electric bus depot here. So his responsibility has been looking at integrating electric buses into the public transport fleet. And so by visiting his depot, I was very fortunate to learn what has worked well for them, what hasn't worked well, what are some of the challenges and difficulties that they are faced with. As well as that, I was fortunate to spend some time with experts in the mining field that were talking about renewable energy and the challenge that renewable energy poses for continuous operations. As I'm sure you're aware, solar and wind power only works when the sun's shining and the wind's blowing, and the sun isn't always shining and the wind isn't always blowing. So these facilities require huge batteries as well as alternative electrical sources to power 24/7 operating mine sites. Anyway, I digress. The whole point of the thesis was to develop a framework so that mining companies with a desired outcome, either to reduce their financial expenditure, to improve operational efficiency, increase technical capability, and most importantly, reduce emissions, could see all the different options that existed in front of them and choose based on their particular requirements which option works best for them. So this takes us to frameworks. From my understanding, a framework is a set of guidelines or a structure with which you can operate in order to achieve a desired outcome. You start with the outcome and then you work backwards to try and figure out what structure is going to best accommodate that outcome. And in terms of frameworks, they are everywhere. Religion. All major religions operate within some sort of framework. The Abrahamic religions, whether it's Christianity, Judaism, or Islam, all have their sacred texts, their teachers, and their practices that if you're a adherent, you can work within that framework to achieve the desired goal of eternal salvation as opposed to eternal damnation. Government frameworks or ideologies, and this is where the desired outcome is to have the most happy, the most prosperous, and the most productive country. And this can take the form of the main three, which is either liberalism, communism, or fascism. Or financial frameworks like socialism or capitalism, where it's all about looking towards the optimal distribution of wealth and financial remuneration, either on the individual, the national, or the international stage. Even in storytelling, the mythological hero's journey, first postulated by Joseph Campbell, is a framework with which a hero operates. They start with a call to adventure, and then there's a rising challenge and a external conflict with which they've either got to find friends or something within themselves to rise to the occasion. They overcome some sort of challenge, they defeat the dragon, they throw the ring into the fires of Mount Doom, and then there's the return journey, which brings the whole hero's journey framework to a holistic close. And this framework has been adopted by books, movies, and many songs as a means of storytelling. So I suppose you're wondering, what's the whole point of frameworks and why is this guy talking about them in so much detail? Of course, it makes sense that we need to operate within a framework. That just makes sense. But to have a framework is to actively and consciously work towards your desired goal. And without one, I personally find it's quite difficult to know where I'm working towards and how much progress I'm making towards that. I'll give you an example. So the education system is probably the epitome of a framework. The whole idea, depending on whether it's high school or university, the desired outcome is to achieve the best academic results to allow you and afford you the most opportunities possible. In university, the desired outcome is to achieve a degree aligned with your particular career path. And in high school, that structure worked very well for me because I knew exactly what I needed to do in order to achieve that desired outcome. I knew when I needed to go to sleep, I knew when I needed to wake up, where I needed to be during the day, and how much time I needed to allot to all of my studies. And within this framework, I was able to flourish because I knew what steps were required and what was expected of me in order to get that desired outcome. And amongst that, there was also a huge amount of support in terms of constantly being surrounded by friends and teachers that wanted to see you succeed, that wanted to see you shine. University was a slightly different experience because whilst you're still working towards the desired outcome of a degree, there's not as much support and there's not as rigorous a framework with which you can operate in. Particularly during COVID, the timing of classes was sporadic. The content was all recorded and put online as opposed to being in person. And this structure didn't work very well for me. And I'm not saying that university is a framework with which people can't thrive and succeed, because I know a lot of friends that are doing very well in that framework. More so, it's about how we can work best and what framework works best for us and our particular needs and our particular direction. And when I was outside of the university framework, I found I was frameworkless. There's the career framework in which you can pursue different roles and responsibilities and climb either a corporate ladder or an entrepreneurial ladder based on skills you develop, experiences you've had. But I found whilst that's a really good framework for career development, it doesn't holistically encapsulate the desired future state for myself. So in terms of frameworks, I believe it's really important, if you are framework inclined, which I believe most people are, to have a framework that works well for you. But before you can establish a framework, you've got to figure out where it is that you're wanting to go and what your desired future state is. To give you an idea, this is my desired future state. I would very much like to be, in a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, in a state of complete presence, where I'm not dwelling on fears or regrets of the past, or anxieties or stresses of the future. Rather, my attention is completely grounded in the present. What this will mean for me is that I'm a lot better at making informed decisions. Because my mind isn't constantly thinking about 1,000 different things, I can focus my attention on exactly what's being presented in front of me. I'm a lot more able to see the opportunities as they arise in the present moment. So that's number one. Number two, no matter when it happens, I would like to be financially independent. The desire behind this goal is to have my time back, so I don't have to be anywhere when I don't necessarily want to be. I can choose and distribute my time according to my own personal schedule, and I'll have resources to allocate to different projects or investments that are aligned with my values and my path. And finally, I'd like to be in a position where I have knowledge to contribute. I'm able to not just pull different things together and develop frameworks, I'm able to actually contribute in either a physical, a mental, or spiritual capacity to the betterment of our society. And whether that's on a individual level, a domestic level, or an international level, as long as I'm planting seeds, that's all that matters for me. So in terms of the framework that I adopt in order to achieve this, it's a very simple one, and if you were interested, please feel free to give it a try. It's 3 things. Each day, how can I improve my body, my mind, and my spirit? And for each one of them, it's the same recipe: food, exercise, and sleep. So we'll start with the body. I would really like to have the physique of an Adonis, but I know that that doesn't come easy. So firstly, food. What am I putting into my body? And that is vital, because what I'm putting into my body determines my digestive health, my muscle development. My dad said to me the other day that you are what you eat. And I thought about that. It's a multi-layered statement, because actually you are 100% what you eat. Everything that happens in your day-to-day life, the energy you burn, the energy you emit, the frequencies you operate at, are all determined based on what you're eating and how your body's processing that. We are what we eat. Next, exercise. Doesn't have to be strenuous exercise or 3 hours in the gym. If that's your desired future state, then by all means go for it. But I also subscribe to movement little and often. And the Japanese actually attribute a lot of their longevity in life to their little and often movement. Whether it's stretching, garden work, or a walk, all of these are really effective ways of conditioning the body and building up resilience. And then sleep. Sleep is crucial for our bodily recovery and rejuvenation. And then mind. The same recipe: food. First, physical food. What exactly are we eating to feed our brain and allow the formation of new neural pathways, and to give ourselves the capacity for new memory storage? As well as physical food, it's literary food or academic food. What are we feeding our brain with in terms of knowledge and new experiences? Are we conversing with people that have got different ideologies or different belief systems, or have different information to share with us? Are we reading or listening to podcasts that might be providing information we haven't historically exposed ourselves to? And then exercise. Same as physical exercise, except this is mental exertion. If you're learning an instrument, are you practicing playing an instrument? If you're learning a language, are you practicing speaking that language? Are you practicing coding? What project are you working on to actually exercise your mind and solidify that knowledge within your framework of understanding? And then sleep. Sleep is pertinent to our mental faculties in terms of giving our mind the opportunity to rest and recover, but as well as that, in REM sleep, that is where we store our memories for the day. So whilst it's all well and good to be learning lots and practicing that knowledge, if we're not sleeping well, our retention of that knowledge is not very good. And then spirit. This is probably the more grey area of the 3, and I believe everyone's got their own form of spirituality, whether it's a religious affiliation or whether it's your own just connection, your sense of belonging. But our food, what are we nourishing our soul with? Like I said, if it's a religion, how are you engaging with your faith? What are your belief systems? What are your values? Otherwise, family. Are you spending time with your loved ones? If it's friends, are you meeting up with your friends? Are you calling them and checking in on them and having meaningful conversations with them? If it's animals, are you spending time in nature? Are you spending time with your pets? And then exercise. Across all 3, exercise is probably one of the most important, because it's one thing to know something, or it's one thing to have the capacity to do something, but when you're not actually doing it, you're not making progress to where you'd like to be. And this is something I found for myself I've definitely been caught in the trap of. By reading a lot or eating very healthily, but not necessarily doing the work, I'm not actually making tangible progress to where I want to go. I get caught in the thought of, actually I am, because I know all this stuff, but if I'm not practicing it and solidifying it by doing, I'm not really making progress to where I want to be. So in terms of exercise for spirit, it can either be prayer, it can be meditation, time in nature. How are you exercising what nourishes your soul? Spending time with your friends, walking your dog. You get the idea. And then sleep. I've got a few friends that have talked about the ability to lucid dream and ideas and inspiration coming to them in their sleep after being stuck on something for a very long time. I haven't had experience with this myself, but I know it's not too far-fetched a notion. So sleep is actually really important for our spirit as well, not just in terms of rest and recovery, but also as an avenue for inspiration. So there you have it. Mind, body, and spirit, food, exercise, and sleep. Yes, it's quite broad, but I find for myself, even having a framework, regardless of how broad it is, allows me to sort of track my own progress. And not that it's a comparison, but I'm looking at what Patrick was like 6 months ago, a year ago, and where I am now. And by adhering to this framework and being consistent with it, I'm finding that not only am I getting stronger, fitter, and healthier, I am getting more present, more conscious, more knowledgeable. But the first thing before any of this whole framework stuff started was to be comfortable in my own skin, to figure out who it is that I am, what it is that I want to do, and the difference that I want to make, and why. Because there are many days where I don't want to go to the gym, or I don't want to read, or I feel as if I'm not good enough. But it's by having this really, really impactful and purposeful why that I am able to get out of bed and I am able to keep working on what it is that I'm wanting to do. And again, I'm not perfect. There are still days where I feel completely disconnected and I feel as if what I'm doing isn't making any impact whatsoever. But that's okay. When I come back to my why and I'm confident in knowing what it is that I'm trying to achieve, irrespective of whether I help one person, 1,000 people, or 1,000,000 people, it's all about my own development. And the more that I'm able to connect with myself and share my own journey, I hope that it might be able to resonate with some other people, particularly people that are very much framework orientated as well. I've got a very good friend, Jack, who I actually had a lot of this conversation with and was a big blueprint for how this episode was going to pan out. So shout out to Jack. And for whoever's listening, I wish you all the best in your own endeavors, regardless of what your why is or what purpose it is that you're working towards. I hope my framework is of some use, and if not, I'd love to hear what framework you're currently operating in and what it is you're working towards. I wish you nothing but the best, and until next time, keep planting seeds of synergy everywhere you go. Thank you, and have a great day.